And welcome back to Hannity. In the wake of Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl's prisoner swap, many are questioning the details surrounding his capture 5 years ago. Now it is being reported that he simply, quote, walked away from his post. Joining me now is the Navy SEAL, one of them, who went on 2 separate missions to try and rescue Sergeant Bergdahl back in 2009. Tom Shea, thank you for being with us. Washington Post today quotes a lot of guys that are very angry because they feel the full story hasn't been told here, and that 6 soldiers gave up their life in the search for him. Is that true?
Yes, Sean. Well, you know, we've been searching for 5 years. I did 2 ops myself that extended over 2 or 3 days in total, and a lot of risk to a lot of soldiers. And it's very interesting that now that after 5 years, when it's not in an extremist situation, that we now have a delay or a transfer in some very high-level operatives from the Taliban.
Were you guys, as you were doing this, were you aware of what the New York Post reported, some of the emails that he sent out, that in fact he said, "I'm ashamed to be an American. The title of U.S. soldier is a lie of fools," and he said, "I'm sorry for everything here. You know, we're a conceited country," on and on. Were you aware of those comments?
No, at the time, you got to realize, at the time, he was to us an American soldier. Whether he did something bad or not, it didn't matter. What we were doing was developing intel that would make our affecting a target more, you know, effective, if you will. So, you know, it really, to us, it still doesn't matter. He's still a U.S. citizen.
I agree. Maybe he was suffering from PTSD or the Stockholm Syndrome. You never know. I mean,
Probably,
look, there's
yeah.
250,000 guys back here that have gone multiple deployments, and they are suffering from PTSD. Potentially, I want to always give our soldiers the benefit of the doubt. But under the circumstances, if he left his post, and he did so willingly, and 6 people lost their lives, does that change how you feel about this exchange, you know, 1 U.S. soldier for 5 others?
Well, I've acknowledged that in my book. I had written about one of the special operations that we went to pick up Bergdahl. Obviously, we didn't get him. And I remember putting down in my book kind of what a pain it was to ask my SEAL brothers to go into a very hostile environment to pick up this guy. And how it makes me feel is I still agree with he's an American citizen. You need to do whatever you can, but you never exchange a prisoner for another one.
The administration's position, Tom, is that we didn't negotiate with terrorists. Their position is that, and Jay Carney said this today, that these 5 guys do not represent a threat to the United States. Do you believe either one of those statements?
I would give it a different name. They have a plan. If you don't want to call it negotiation, somebody made a plan and a decision to make this transfer happen. I think there's a plan.
But in reality, didn't we negotiate the release? I mean, that's just, I mean, in other words, let's stop parsing words and splitting hairs here. This was a negotiation, and they're telling us it's not. They're telling us there's no threat posed by what is described as the dream team of terrorists. Do you believe that?
You and I both know that you don't get better in prison. So they've been in prison much of their adult life. What is it, 12, 13 years now? They didn't like the United States more from that experience, so they're not going to go back happier.
Yeah.
So they pose a big threat to soldiers and Americans.
All right, Tom, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. And joining me now with more reaction is former Congressman Colonel Allen West. Colonel, welcome back. Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. Good to be with you, Sean. No threat, and this was not a negotiation. Reaction?
Well, of course they're a threat. It had been said countless amounts of times previously. We basically just turned over the Taliban senior cabinet members back to the Taliban. And we have to be really concerned about what is going to be the long-term ramifications. And I don't believe that Qatar is going to honor any type of agreement, because Qatar is actually the country that is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist forces fighting in Syria as well.
So, number one is, don't we have to tell the American people the truth? We did negotiate with terrorists, did we not?
Yes, we did negotiate with terrorists, and the bottom line is that we gave the Taliban what they asked for. That did not have to happen.
And does this set a precedent now where more Americans are likely to be taken captive or hostage?
Yes, it does set a precedent because what you have done is recognized a non-state, non-uniform belligerent, a terrorist organization that the Geneva Convention does not even recognize because they don't openly declare their arms or wear any type of uniform. So this has once again established a very different precedent on the battlefield that we're going to have to contend with.
What about the Bergdahl family, both the son and the father, and where their sympathies lie? Do you find some of these things curious about what the son has said, what the father has said when he was in the Rose Garden with the president? Is that disturbing to you?
Well, it is definitely questionable, and having been a former combat commander and also having served in Afghanistan for 2.5 years, I can tell you that if a soldier leaves his weapon and leaves his assigned duty post, he is a deserter. And if this soldier took a canteen of water, a knife, and a compass, and you only take a compass if you're trying to find your way to something, that is very questionable. So we're glad to have Bowe Bergdahl back home, but the thing we need to look into is investigate the allegations of desertion, and we can't allow our emotions to get in the way.
Time.com, 6 Americans died searching for this guy. You know what?
Yeah,
those families
right.
deserve, and some of them are now speaking out. I think they deserve answers, too. So, Colonel, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Some of those families were lied to by the administration as to why their loved ones died.
It's a good point, and we'll get to the bottom of that probably in tomorrow's edition. Thank you. And coming up, did President Obama, did he break the law when he released these 5 Taliban Gitmo detainees in exchange for Sergeant Bergdahl? Well, some claim that he did because he didn't notify Congress. We're going to get the answers. Also, Ann Coulter joins us tonight. We'll get her take on the prisoner swap and more straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. Yet again tonight, Barack Obama has shown that he believes he is above the law, as there are serious questions now being raised about whether or not the Bergdahl prison exchange was even legal. Now, here's why. The law requires the White House to notify Congress at least 30 days prior to making any transfers from Guantanamo Bay, and an unnamed senior government official spoke to the Washington Post and admitted that the law was not followed, saying, quote, the administration determined that given the unique and exigent circumstances, such a transfer would go forward, notwithstanding the notice requirement. So was the law broken in this prisoner swap? Here with reaction from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall. Jay, it's a simple, basic question. The law reads simply to me, they broke the law. Again, something they've done with regularity, and you and I have discussed in detail. Was the law obeyed or not?
Right. And they did not follow the law. And the law is clear that you give 30 days notice from the Secretary of Defense to the various committees of Congress that would be relevant to a decision like this. And it's simply notice and certification that the people being released will not be placed in a situation where they can do harm to the United States. By the way, the law was even more stringent under previous administrations. It was loosened up a little bit in the Defense Authorization Act that came out last year. But the fact of the matter is the law is very clear. It was, regardless of what your views are on whether this exchange, and it's hard to argue with an American being released and being able to come home. But the reality is the law required a 30-day notification. You know that these discussions were going on for more than 30 days. All they had to do was notify and certify to Congress, and that would have solved this problem. But again, the president chose
But
to ignore the
they've done this on the health care law. They've done this with welfare. Yep. They've done this on a whole variety of issues. Even Jonathan Turley says we're at a constitutional tipping point. You know, as I look at this, Leslie, let's play Jay Carney. He said repeatedly that, in fact, they would go to Congress if there was any such deal. Here's what he said.
As we have long said, however, we would not make any decisions about transfer of any detainees without consulting with Congress and without doing so in accordance with U.S. law. At this time, we've made no decisions about the transfer of detainees, and in accordance with law, we would be consulting with Congress should we make any decisions about that. So we remain committed to the closure of Guantanamo Bay, as you know, but separate from that, on these specific issues about individual detainees, that would be a process that is done in accordance with law.
Leslie, I assume you're a law and order person. They spelled it out very clearly right there. So they violated what they said was their own interpretation of the law.
Well, first of all, you have the president signing statement. Second of all, I concur not only with the U.S. Constitution in Article 2, but with our own Defense Secretary Hagel, who says that the president has constitutionally the authority. And in addition to this, if you look at not just the press,
hang on, you didn't answer my question. Did you just hear Jay Carney say that in accordance with the law, we would be consulting Congress if we make any decisions about this? His words, not mine. They said they promised it repeatedly. That was their interpretation. Now you're going to spin a new interpretation?
How do we have letters? How do we have conversations? How do we have congressional members in both the House and the Senate on the record, such as Duncan, such as Crapo, such as Risch, such as Hunter?
Leslie, you're very good at dodging.
And we even have journalists reporting on this since last May.
In accordance with the law, we would be consulting with Congress should we make any decisions on this. What part of that did they not listen to? Their own interpretation. Jay, you're an attorney.
Well, I mean, here's the problem, Leslie, with your argument, and with due respect, again, not getting into the merits of the transfer here, but the legality of it. The president cannot decide that a law is unconstitutional by issuing a signing statement where he determines that the notice requirement was a violation of Article 2 of the United States Constitution. He doesn't get to do that. He's not a king. He's the president. And that's number one. Number two, the administration's own position, as Sean just played on the program, the position of the administration was that the notification and certification requirements on prisoner exchanges had to take place because that is what the law is, and that the president wants to make this kind of exception to it. He doesn't get to do it that way. And here's the thing that, Sean, this is what I don't understand. You know they were working on this for more than 30 days. It didn't have to be public. It just had to go to the committee leadership.
You know how we know.
Why didn't they just do that and follow through?
Well, we got some of the details.
Right.
The Taliban, at one point in the negotiations that they claim weren't negotiations, actually walked away from the table because they had specifically requested these 5 people and eventually got it.
Right.
Was this a negotiation, Leslie, or do you spin this as well, saying, no, this wasn't a negotiation?
Well, first of all, Sean, I know a lot of people are going to hate me for this, but I feel that if we're going to get an American home, whether it's one or numerous Americans,
I didn't ask you.
I've always been in favor. I've always been in favor of negotiating with whoever we need to negotiate with.
Was this a negotiation with terrorists or not? Of course it was.
I don't think it was necessarily a negotiation with terrorists. I think it was a negotiation, obviously.
And do you agree with Jay Carney when he said that they represent no threat to the United States?
Not to leave an American behind. We are not to leave our Americans behind.
You know,
we don't
Sean,
send our men and women in service overseas to leave them behind.
Protect Obama at all costs. Sure. Baghdad Bob did a great job lying against it.
This is about protecting the American men and women that we send overseas.
The president knows that he's not going to be held responsible. That's... At the end of the day, he's not going to be held responsible, and that's why he did it.
Somebody will try to impeach him.
All right. Yeah. Maybe he should be. Jonathan Turley thinks we're at a constitutional tipping point. Hardly a member of my vast right-wing conspiracy. Guys, good to see you. Thank you.
Jonathan Turley's right.
Coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
I'm so looking forward to seeing your face after these last 5.5 years. Long, long years. And to giving you a great big bear hug and holding you in my arms again, never wanting to let you go.
Now, words from a heartbroken mother. Anybody can sympathize with what she and her husband have been going through, but some very bizarre statements and comments and tweets by the father. When we come back, our great American panel, Rick Unger, Gavin McInnes, and Jedediah, they're going to weigh in on that and more as we continue.
I'm so looking forward to seeing your face after these last 5.5 years. Long, long years. And to giving you a great big bear hug and holding you in my arms again, never wanting to let you go.
And I want you to know that I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of your character. I'm so proud of your patience and your perseverance.
All right, welcome back to Hannity. That was a clip of Sergeant Bergdahl's parents, Jenny and Bob, at a press conference yesterday. And while listening to their emotional reactions, you can't help but wonder, how would you feel if you were the mother, father, sister, brother of the freed POW? They'd be happy. Here to talk about this, there were questions raised. Democratic strategist Rick Unger, author Gavin McInnes, and outnumbered co-host here on the Fox News Channel at noon every day is Jedediah. All right, here's what we know. At the Rose Garden, the father praised Allah. He actually said at the end of the event, he recited the most frequent phrase in the Quran, which translates, in the name of Allah, most gracious, most compassionate. Then we've got his father saying, I'm working to free all Gitmo prisoners, people that have killed Americans. And then the New York Post reports that the son that was held captive said he was ashamed to be an American.
Right. So my question is, didn't the president or this administration know any of this? Isn't it an odd visual optics for him to be standing with this guy who was tweeting about this, who then went home, by the way, and after this incident in the Rose Garden, went home and tweeted more about wanting Guantanamo folks to be released. He didn't just stop there, and then there were deleted tweets. This story just gets more and more crazy as
and now
time
parents,
passes.
six soldiers died searching for this guy that may have gone AWOL, may have deserted, obviously has some sympathies and some capacity for the enemy, based if these statements are true, or is he ashamed of his country?
It's a perfect example of Obama's incompetence. He dips his hand into the war randomly and says, I'm going to free this guy, I guess. He chooses a loser, a deserter, who's killed men. He's killed those boys. He killed those 6 soldiers that went to find him. You're
saying that
he's a traitor.
Bergdahl did.
His negligence killed those other soldiers.
Well, one of the parents of that lost their son is furious, and I don't blame him. But I didn't put you on the spot in the beginning.
Why not?
Because, well, maybe I should have. But in all honesty, this is a bad precedent. You have to agree with that.
I agree it's a weird one. I have to tell you, and actually I thought you were being a little more generous than I would be on the fact that he simply went AWOL. Every bit of evidence I've seen today gives me reason to believe he was a deserter. This is not going to play well. The other thing that I'm
ashamed to be an American, that we're, as a nation, a conceited country.
But this is why I think this is about to get a whole lot uglier. That press conference with the parents. And you're right in what you said, the father said in the end. He's entitled to his opinion. I actually agree with him on Gitmo, but what a weird photo opportunity for the president.
Well, radical Islamists took his kid.
What is going on with that beard, by the way? What is that beard? He's not a redneck.
He actually grew it out of sympathy with the Taliban.
Yeah,
he said so. And he learned the language.
Can't someone buy our president a Google machine? Look up people.
It's the communications folks.
Let me ask you a question.
There was no knowledge from the administration. Why are we all sitting here
chasing a rabbit? Is this one way that got us off the VA scandal?
No.
Well, I think this is a big deal, too, though. I mean, we've just incentivized the Taliban to take American hostages. I mean, that's a big deal.
Remember the Philippines with the Iraq War? The Taliban kidnapped one random contractor, and then the Philippines said, okay, we're getting out of Iraq, and ran home with their tails between their legs. I remember that happening and going, what a bunch of wimps. Thank God that's not us.
So you think the president, as a liberal, is coming under heavy fire in the days ahead as we really confirm more and more about this family, about this kid?
I got to tell you, I got to be honest. It goes beyond.
I won't hear from you for the next month. You'll go into hiding.
I'm going to be
in the witness protection program. All right, but we got to roll.
It's a problem.
It's the ineptitude of the administration that they thought they didn't do any research, and they thought we weren't going to do any research.
The conspiracy is the best case scenario.
It's called Google. Does anybody at the White House know Google?
Well, they're waiting for us to tell them what happened. They're waiting to figure it out in the
Ultimately, I blame Jedediah. This is all her fault.
Nice try.
Whatever works.
All right, and coming up, the always outspoken Ann Coulter. She'll weigh in. We'll find out what she thinks about the White House's Taliban prisoner exchange. And get ready for this. I went to visit the Robertson family at their Duck Commander headquarters. By the way, wait till you see this basketball game in Louisiana. Uncle Si explains what he would do if he were president. Straight ahead.
The gloves of love, the wisdom teeth, what you on about?
And welcome back to Hannity. Now, thanks to our Commander-in-Chief and his decision to negotiate with terrorists, his administration won't have to talk about that pesky little VA scandal for a couple of days, nor will anyone be focused on the departure of Secretary Eric Shinseki. How convenient. Here to weigh in on all this and more, author, columnist, our friend, Ann Coulter. What's your reaction to all this? You always have an interesting take on everything. Are you going to surprise me tonight?
I don't think we'll disagree, which may disappoint you. I don't think this is a way to distract from the VA scandal. I think this is worse than the VA scandal. What Obama has done here will not come as a surprise to those of you who've read my book, Treason. It does seem to fit right in line with a Democratic president. I mean, I keep waiting for someone to come out and say that at least all the news we have so far, oh, no, that's not true. Those emails weren't real. And no, the father didn't grow the beard in solidarity with the Taliban, and he didn't actually stand in the Rose Garden and thank Allah. He hasn't demanded the release of all terrorists from Guantanamo in return for the children we've killed. But I haven't really heard anyone leaping forward to say that all of this is untrue, and that the one we traded 5 hardened terrorists for himself deserted, got 6 Americans killed. Why are we doing anything to get this guy back? He's ashamed to be an American. He calls America disgusting. He wanted to leave, so he left. He got what he wanted.
I think that's well said. In other words, why do we even risk any? Look, the only caveat I would make to that, and you might even call me liberal for saying this, God forbid, I do worry because I've met too many of these guys that have had long deployments, that have PTSD. I do believe the Stockholm Syndrome is proven to be real, and for whatever reason, people take on the identity or at least sympathize with their captives. Things like that psychologically can happen, and it's our job. We set them there to bring them home. In my opinion, that could have happened and may not have. Maybe.
Perhaps, but I would recommend at that point that you read up on Jeremiah Denton, Sam Johnson, James Stockdale, who were held for 9 years in Japanese war camps, put in solitary confinement for 4 years, had their limbs ripped out of the sockets, had their backs broken, their legs broken. And when Jeremiah Denton was asked to provide them a propaganda video, he not only blinked out in Morse code torture, the first time the U.S. found out that our POWs were being tortured, but he said, the statement was beautiful. I can only paraphrase it. I don't know what's been going on, but I stand with my government, and I will until the day I die. Boy, we don't have them like Jeremiah Denton anymore. If this is what we have just given up 5 terrorists for, which, as many have pointed out, is putting all Americans at risk.
All right, and we'll see you back here in studio next week. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.